Mariah Johnson, a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher, had always been a strong, dignified woman. Her life was filled with years of teaching young minds, imparting knowledge, and guiding children toward their bright futures. But today, things felt different. Today, she was stepping out of her comfort zone and into a world that she had always admired from a distance, the world of luxury cars. It was a crisp morning when Mariah decided to visit the local car dealership. She had spent years saving, setting aside a small portion of her retirement fund, and now, she was ready to make a purchase. It wasn't just about the car. For her, this was a symbol of all the hard work and sacrifices she had made throughout her life. A reward for herself after years of teaching others. Today, she would drive off the lot in a brand new luxury vehicle, and she was filled with excitement and a sense of accomplishment. When Mariah pulled into the dealership parking lot, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. She had never bought a car like this before, and the thought of stepping into the showroom made her feel like a fish out of water. The sleek cars, the polished floors, and the expensive atmosphere all seemed foreign to her. But Mariah was determined. She had worked hard all her life, and if there was one thing she knew, it was that she deserved this. She stepped out of her car and walked toward the entrance of the dealership. The moment she walked in, the first thing she noticed was the stark contrast between the sleek, modern interior and the old-world charm of her own modest home. The place was immaculate, filled with shiny new cars that glistened under the bright lights. The air was thick with the smell of leather and new car scent, and there was a certain kind of hush that filled the space. A young man at the front desk greeted her, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. He was polite, but there was an air of indifference in the way he looked at her. He didn't seem to take her seriously, and Mariah couldn't help but notice the way he glanced her over with an almost dismissive attitude. She tried to ignore it and went straight to the point. "I'm here to buy a car," Mariah said with a smile, hoping to break the ice. The young man gave a half-hearted nod. "Do you have a specific model in mind?" he asked, his tone more perfunctory than interested. Mariah nodded eagerly. "I'm interested in the luxury sedan over there," she said, pointing to a gleaming black car on display. It was beautiful, with sleek lines and a polished finish. It was exactly what she had been dreaming about. The young man looked over at the car, his eyes narrowing slightly. "That's a high-end model. Are you sure you want to go for something like that?" he asked, almost as if doubting her ability to afford it. Mariah's smile faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered. "Yes, I'm sure," she said, standing a little taller. She was used to people doubting her, but she had learned long ago to stand firm in her decisions. The young man hesitated for a moment before walking over to the car. He opened the door and motioned for her to sit inside. As she settled into the plush leather seat, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She had worked so hard to get to this point, and this car was a symbol of her success. She ran her hand over the steering wheel, admiring its smooth finish and the way the leather felt under her fingers. But her moment of joy was short-lived. The salesman didn't seem to share her excitement. As she sat there, trying to get a feel for the car, he didn't seem to care much about her experience. Instead of taking the time to explain the car's features, he simply stood by, waiting for her to make a decision. His disinterest was palpable, and Mariah could sense that he was already writing her off. After a few moments of awkward silence, the young man finally spoke. "I'm going to have to check with my manager about this one," he said, almost as if he were dismissing her request. "I don't think you're really serious about this purchase." Mariah's heart sank. She had been excited, but now she felt small and insignificant. Was it because she was older? Was it because she was a black woman in a space that seemed reserved for the wealthy and the powerful? She didn't know, but she knew that the way she was being treated wasn't right. Still, she tried to keep her composure. "Excuse me, but I came here to buy a car," Mariah said, her voice firm but polite. If I need to speak with someone else, I'm happy to do so. The young man's eyes flickered with impatience. You should probably leave if you're not serious about buying today, he said, clearly uncomfortable. He didn't even look her in the eye. Mariah felt a flush of anger rise within her. How dare he speak to her like that? She had spent years building her life, and she deserved to be treated with respect. But instead of letting her anger take over, she took a deep breath and smiled. Thank you for your time, she said, her voice cool. I'll leave, but I expect to speak with your manager before I go. Without waiting for a response, she stood up and walked toward the door. She wasn't going to let this young man's rudeness stop her. But as she walked out of the dealership, her disappointment lingered. She had hoped that this would be a day of celebration, but instead, it had turned into one of the most disheartening moments of her life. Outside, Mariah paused for a moment, taking in the fresh air. She could feel the sting of the experience, but she wasn't ready to let it define her. As she stood by her car, looking back at the dealership, she realized something: she wasn't going to let this man's behavior go unchallenged. He had underestimated her, and that mistake would cost him. She didn't know how or when, but she promised herself that she would find a way to make him, and the dealership, understand who they had just kicked out. And that thought, that determination, ignited a fire inside her that she hadn't felt in years. Mariah wasn't just going to leave defeated. She was going to take control, and in the process, she was going to show them all just how powerful and resilient she truly was. Mariah sat in her car for a moment, reflecting on what had just happened. She could still feel the sting of the young salesman's words, the dismissive look in his eyes, and the way he had subtly told her to leave. He had treated her as if she didn't belong in that space, as if her age and her appearance were reasons enough to write her off. But as she sat there, something inside her shifted. She wasn't about to let this moment define her. She started the engine, but instead of driving away in frustration, she took a deep breath and set her mind on something else. What if I owned this place? The thought was fleeting at first, but the more she considered it, the more it made sense. Mariah wasn't a woman who accepted defeat easily. Her years of teaching had taught her patience, persistence, and the value of standing up for what was right. The thought of owning that dealership, of taking control and showing them what she was capable of, sparked something powerful in her. She pulled out her phone and began searching for information about the dealership. She quickly discovered that the dealership wasn't an independent business. It was part of a larger corporation, one that had several locations across the state. Mariah's mind raced. If this dealership was part of a bigger company, that meant it might be possible for her to get involved. She might even be able to buy the dealership outright. The idea seemed far-fetched at first, but the more she thought about it, the more it felt like a challenge she could take on. Mariah had never been one to shy away from challenges. As a teacher, she had faced many obstacles, from budget cuts to difficult students, and she had always found a way to rise above them. This, she realized, was no different. If she could figure out how to connect with the right people, how to make the right moves, she could turn this situation into something powerful, not just for her, but for other people like her, who were often overlooked or underestimated. She pulled into a nearby parking lot and decided to make the first call. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed the number for the corporate office. The phone rang several times before a receptionist picked up. "Good afternoon, how can I assist you?" the receptionist asked, her voice polite but distracted. "Hello, my name is Mariah Johnson, and I'd like to speak to someone about a business opportunity involving one of your dealerships," Mariah said, keeping her voice steady. The receptionist hesitated for a moment before replying, "May I ask what the nature of your inquiry is?" Mariah took a deep breath. She knew she had to be clear but respectful. "I was at one of your dealerships today, and I had an unfortunate experience. I'm interested in purchasing the dealership, and I'd like to speak with someone who can discuss that with me." The receptionist was quiet for a moment, likely surprised by the boldness of her request. "I'll transfer you to our corporate liaison. Please hold for a moment." The line went silent as Mariah waited. She wasn't sure what to expect. She didn't know if her request would be taken seriously, but she was determined to try. If this was going to work, she needed to approach it strategically. After what felt like an eternity, a new voice came on the line. "Hello, this is Jason Reynolds, how can I help you?" "Hi, Jason," Mariah said, her voice calm but firm. "My name is Mariah Johnson, and I'm interested in discussing the possibility of purchasing one of your dealerships." Jason seemed taken aback for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "I see. May I ask why you're interested in this?" Mariah didn't hesitate. "I was at one of your locations today, and I wasn't treated with the respect I deserve as a customer. I've been saving for years to buy a car, and I walked into your dealership with the intention of making a purchase. However, I was dismissed by one of your salespeople, and I felt humiliated. I believe in fairness, and I want to show your company that it's possible to run a successful dealership based on respect and integrity." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Mariah could hear the sound of typing, and she knew that Jason was likely checking her information. Finally, he spoke again. "Well, Mrs. Johnson, I appreciate your honesty. It's not often we receive such direct feedback. I'll be honest with you, it's unusual for someone to approach us about purchasing one of our dealerships, especially someone with no prior experience in the industry. But I'll make a note of your inquiry, and we can arrange a meeting to discuss it further." Mariah's heart raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for. "I understand it might seem unusual, but I've been in business my whole life helping others, managing my finances, and working hard to get where I am. I may not have experience in the car industry, but I know what it takes to run a successful business. I have the funds, and I have a vision. I'm serious about this." Jason seemed to consider her words carefully. "I'll forward your information to the appropriate people. It might take a few days for them to get back to you. But I'll tell you this, your approach is unique, and I'm intrigued. We'll see what we can do." Mariah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had taken the first step, and now it was a waiting game. But she wasn't going to let herself get distracted. She had a plan, and she wasn't going to back down. Over the next few days, she continued to make calls, do research, and gather as much information as she could. She knew that this wasn't going to be easy, but she was more determined than ever. She would prove that she could take control of the situation, and she would show the dealership that she was not someone to be underestimated. As the days went by, Mariah's mind stayed focused on the goal. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for anyone who had ever been overlooked, mistreated, or judged because of their age, race, or appearance. She wanted to make a difference, not just for herself but for others who might find themselves in a similar situation. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. This was her chance to make a lasting impact, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. The call came a few days later. Jason informed Mariah that the corporate team was willing to meet with her to discuss her proposal. The excitement that filled her was palpable. She had made it this far, and now, she was one step closer to achieving the impossible. This was just the beginning of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. Mariah's heart pounded with anticipation as she prepared for her meeting with the corporate team. She had spent the last few days researching everything she could about the car dealership industry, the parent company, and how businesses like these were managed. While she may not have had experience in car sales, Mariah was no stranger to business. She had spent decades managing a classroom, organizing school events, and dealing with everything from budgets to relationships. In many ways, running a dealership wasn't so different from running a school. It was about people, respect, and making sure things ran smoothly. The day of the meeting arrived, and Mariah put on her best suit, something simple, yet professional. She didn't need flashy clothes to make a statement, her experience and her resolve would speak louder than anything she wore. She arrived at the corporate office, an imposing glass building in the heart of the city, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. When she walked into the conference room, she was greeted by a group of 4 men and women. They were all much younger than her, dressed in expensive suits, their faces unreadable as they studied her. The CEO, a man in his early 40s, extended his hand. "Miss Johnson, thank you for coming in today. I understand you have a proposal you'd like to discuss." Mariah shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for meeting with me. I appreciate the opportunity." The CEO gestured for her to sit at the head of the table, a position she wasn't used to. She had always been the teacher, the guide, the one who worked behind the scenes to make things happen. But now, she was the one calling the shots. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on her. This was her chance to take control not just of her life, but of something much bigger. She sat down and looked each person in the eye, taking a moment before speaking. "I'm here today because of the way I was treated at one of your dealerships," she began. "I came in to buy a car, and I was treated with disrespect, as if I didn't belong there. The salesman dismissed me without even considering the possibility that I was a serious buyer. I've been saving for years to make this purchase, and yet I was made to feel like I wasn't worthy of the service your company claims to provide." The room was silent. The executives exchanged glances, some of them looking uncomfortable, others unsure how to respond. But Mariah didn't falter. She continued speaking, her voice calm but firm. "Now, I could walk away from this and forget about it, but that's not who I am. I believe that what happened to me is a reflection of a larger problem. People like me, older, black women, are often underestimated and ignored. And that's something I want to change. I want to show your company that it's not just about making a sale, it's about creating an environment of respect and inclusion. That's why I'm here today, not just to buy a car, but to buy the dealership." The CEO raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her boldness. "Buy the dealership," he repeated, clearly trying to process what she was saying. "Yes," Mariah said, her voice unwavering. "I'm interested in purchasing the dealership. I have the financial resources, and I have the vision. I know that I can run this business in a way that treats every customer with the dignity they deserve. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for the chance to show you what I can do." There was a long pause, and for a moment, Mariah wondered if she had pushed too far. But then, the CEO smiled. "You're a bold one, Miss Johnson. I'll give you that. I'll admit, I wasn't expecting this. But it's rare that someone comes to us with such a clear sense of purpose. Let's talk numbers." The conversation quickly shifted to the details of the deal. Mariah had done her homework. She knew exactly how much the dealership was worth, how much it was earning, and the potential it had for growth. She didn't make wild promises or boast about things she couldn't deliver. Instead, she laid out a clear plan for how she would turn the dealership around, starting with a focus on customer service. "You see," Mariah said, "when customers come into a dealership, they want to feel valued. They want to know that the person helping them cares about their needs, not just about making a sale. I've seen this in the classroom my whole career. The best teachers are the ones who take the time to listen, to understand, and to help students reach their full potential. I'll apply the same approach here. But it's not just about customer service, it's about fostering a work culture where every employee feels respected and appreciated." One of the executives, a woman in her late 20s, spoke up. "I can see where you're coming from, but you have to understand that running a business like this requires more than just goodwill. It takes expertise, market knowledge, and a lot of hard work. Are you sure you're prepared for that?" Mariah smiled. "I've spent a lifetime working hard. I've managed budgets, dealt with difficult situations, and helped people grow. I may not know everything about the car industry, but I'm a quick learner. And I have a team of people who will help me. I'm ready to do the work, and I'm not afraid of the challenges ahead. The executives looked at each other, clearly weighing her words. Mariah didn't back down. She knew that her offer was bold, but it was also well thought out. She wasn't asking for something easy. She was offering to make a significant change to turn the dealership into a model of inclusivity and respect. And she believed in it with all her heart. After what felt like an eternity, the CEO finally spoke. "You make a compelling case, Miss Johnson. I can't make any promises today, but I'll be honest, we're looking for fresh ideas. And what you're offering is definitely fresh. We'll get back to you soon with an answer." Mariah stood up, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. "Thank you for your time. I appreciate you taking me seriously." As she left the meeting, her heart was racing. She had made her case, and now all she could do was wait. But one thing was certain: she wasn't backing down. She had taken the first step, and now it was up to the corporate team to decide if they were ready for change. If they weren't, Mariah would find another way. She had already proven to herself that anything was possible if she was willing to fight for it. This was just the beginning. And Mariah knew that no matter what happened, she had already won something far more valuable than a dealership. She had won her own belief in her power to make a difference. Days passed, and Mariah found herself caught in a whirlwind of anticipation. Each morning, she woke up early, determined to stay busy and focused, but her mind kept drifting back to the meeting with the corporate team. She had given her best pitch, and now she was waiting for an answer, unsure of what direction her life would take. But as the hours ticked by, Mariah refused to sit back and do nothing. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. She spent her days researching more about the car industry, talking to people who had experience in the field, and preparing herself for any possible follow-up questions. She reached out to a few local business owners who had gone through similar processes of buying and managing large businesses. Every conversation gave her more insight, and Mariah found herself growing more confident with each passing day. But even though she kept herself busy, the uncertainty of waiting gnawed at her. She hadn't expected to feel this nervous. After all, she had spent years teaching children, managing classrooms, and handling the pressures of working in a system that didn't always value her. This was no different, right? But it felt different. It felt bigger. It was her chance to prove that a woman like her, someone who had been overlooked and underestimated for so long, could not only succeed but thrive. Then, one afternoon, her phone rang. "Miss Johnson," the voice on the other end of the line said, "this is Jason Reynolds from the corporate office. I wanted to personally inform you that after reviewing your proposal, the board has decided to move forward with your offer." Mariah's heart skipped a beat. "You're officially the new owner of the dealership." For a moment, Mariah couldn't process what she had just heard. Her mind was racing, and her hands trembled as she sat down. She had done it. She had actually done it. In a world where so many people like her were dismissed and underestimated, she had taken control of her own destiny. "Thank you," she finally managed to say, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I won't let you down." The next few days were a blur. Mariah signed the necessary documents and took ownership of the dealership. She was handed the keys, but it wasn't just a set of car keys, it was the key to her future, and to a future she hoped to build for others as well. She spent the next few days meeting with the staff, getting to know them, and listening to their concerns. The team had no idea what to expect from her, but she was determined to lead by example. The first thing Mariah noticed was the tension in the air. The staff was unsure of what to make of her. Many of them had seen her walk into the dealership months earlier, only to be treated with disrespect. Some were uncomfortable with the idea of an older black woman taking charge of what had always been a mostly male and white-dominated industry. They were waiting to see if she would crumble under pressure or if she would live up to the high expectations she had set during her meeting with the corporate team. Mariah understood their hesitation, and she didn't expect things to change overnight. But she was determined to create a new environment, one where respect and inclusion weren't just buzzwords, but fundamental parts of the company culture. She started by meeting with each employee individually. She asked them about their experiences, their challenges, and their ideas for improving the dealership. She listened to everything they had to say, offering words of encouragement and support. She made it clear that she wasn't here to tear things down, she was here to build something better, for everyone. One of the salesmen, the same young man who had treated her poorly when she first walked into the dealership, came into her office to apologize. He looked nervous, unsure of how to approach her. Mariah greeted him with a calm smile, and after a long silence, he finally spoke. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you before," he said, his voice sincere. "I judged you before I even gave you a chance. I thought you were just another person who wouldn't be able to afford a car like that, and I shouldn't have done that." Mariah could see the regret in his eyes, and she appreciated his honesty. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "But let me remind you that it's not just about the money, it's about respect. Every customer, regardless of who they are or what they can afford, deserves to be treated with dignity. That's what I expect from all of you." The salesman nodded, his face softening. "I understand now," he said. "And I'll do better. I promise." Mariah knew this was just the beginning. Change didn't happen overnight, and she understood that it would take time for her new vision to fully take hold. But she was patient. She had been teaching for decades, after all. She knew that lasting change took time, and that it was a process, not a one-time event. In the following weeks, Mariah continued to work closely with the team. She made improvements to the customer service experience, revamped the hiring practices, and implemented diversity training to ensure that every employee understood the importance of creating an inclusive, welcoming environment for all customers. The results were immediate. Customers began to notice the difference. They appreciated the personalized attention they received when they walked in. They could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the warmth, the respect, the genuine desire to help. Word spread, and soon, the dealership started seeing more foot traffic. Sales increased, but it wasn't just about the numbers, it was about something much deeper. Mariah's approach was working. She had turned a place that had been riddled with disrespect and bias into a business where employees felt valued and customers felt heard. The dealership had become a model for what a business could look like when it operated with fairness and inclusivity at its core. One evening, as Mariah sat in her office reflecting on the progress she had made, her phone buzzed with a message from the CEO of the corporate parent company. He wanted to meet her in person to discuss the success of her leadership. As she made her way to the meeting, Mariah felt a sense of pride. She had proven that no matter how impossible things seemed, with enough determination and grit, she could achieve anything. She wasn't just the owner of a car dealership, she was a symbol of what could be accomplished when people refused to be underestimated, when they took control of their own destinies. As the meeting went on, the CEO complimented her on her success, acknowledging the positive changes she had made. "You've exceeded all expectations," he said. "We're proud to have you as part of our team." Mariah smiled. "I'm just getting started." Her journey wasn't over yet, but she had proven one powerful thing, that a woman, no matter her age, race, or background, could rise to the top and create real change in an industry that needed it. And with that, she knew she had only just begun to leave her mark. Months passed since Mariah took over the dealership, and with each passing day, the business grew stronger under her leadership. The challenges she faced in the beginning, being underestimated, dismissed, and disregarded, had only made her more determined. Now, as the new owner, she was reshaping the business into something that not only provided exceptional service but also embraced the values of respect, inclusion, and fairness. People began to take notice, and not just within the dealership, word spread far beyond the walls of her company. Customers who once felt marginalized by the traditional car buying process now found themselves treated with kindness and understanding. Employees, who had grown used to a culture of indifference and sales pressure, now felt valued and motivated. They respected Mariah not only for her business acumen but for her ability to inspire them to be better, both professionally and personally. Her impact was tangible, and it spread through the dealership like wildfire. One afternoon, Mariah sat in her office, looking out at the showroom floor. It was bustling with activity, cars were being sold, and customers were chatting happily with her staff. Her team was moving seamlessly, working together as a well-oiled machine. The tension that once existed in the building had disappeared, replaced by a sense of pride and purpose. Mariah could feel the positive energy in the air. Her heart swelled with pride as she realized how far they had come in such a short time. A soft knock at the door broke her from her thoughts. "Come in," Mariah called, looking up to see one of her senior salespeople, Jason, standing in the doorway. "Miss Johnson," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, "I just wanted to say thank you. Things have really changed here since you took over. I've been with the dealership for over 10 years, and I've never seen morale this high. The customers are happier, the team's working better together, and I'm proud to be part of it." Mariah smiled warmly at him. "Thank you, Jason. But this isn't just me. It's all of us. I couldn't have done any of this without a team that's willing to make the change and embrace new ideas. You all believed in the vision, and you've made it happen." Jason nodded. "Well, you lead by example. And that makes all the difference. It's inspiring." Mariah's mind wandered back to when she first walked through the doors of that very dealership, feeling like an outsider. Now, she had not only transformed the business but had also earned the respect of the people who had once doubted her. She realized how important it was to be treated with dignity and fairness, and she carried that principle with her every day. As the months passed, Mariah continued to refine the dealership's operations. She introduced a community outreach program that helped local schools and nonprofits with car donations, ensuring that those who had struggled to access reliable transportation now had the opportunity to do so. The dealership wasn't just about selling cars anymore, it was about making a difference in the community and giving back. Mariah felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that her business was doing more than just turning a profit. One day, as Mariah was reviewing the company's quarterly reports, she received an unexpected phone call from the corporate office. The voice on the other end was familiar: Jason, the CEO. "Miss Johnson," Jason said, "I wanted to personally congratulate you on everything you've accomplished with the dealership. The numbers are impressive, yes, but it's more than that. You've completely transformed the culture, and it hasn't gone unnoticed." Mariah felt a rush of pride. "Thank you, Jason. I've worked hard to make sure this place is more than just a business, it's a place where people feel valued." Jason continued, "That's why I'm calling. The board has noticed your leadership, and they want to offer you more opportunities. We're considering you for a senior leadership role within the parent company. You've proven yourself to be someone who not only understands business but also knows how to inspire and lead others." Mariah's eyes widened. A senior leadership role? She had never imagined something like this. She had come to the dealership with the intention of proving that she could run a business successfully, but this was more than she ever thought possible. The opportunity was overwhelming, but it also filled her with excitement. It was validation, not just for her abilities, but for the principles she had fought so hard to implement. "That's an incredible offer," Mariah said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm honored, truly. But I need some time to think it over. I'm passionate about the work we're doing here, and I want to make sure that any changes are in the best interest of the team and the community we built." "I completely understand," Jason replied. "Take all the time you need. But just know that whatever you decide, you've already made a huge impact. You've set a new standard for what leadership looks like, and we're grateful to have you on board." Mariah hung up the phone, her mind racing. A senior leadership role? It was a huge decision, and she knew she needed to carefully consider what that would mean for her future. But as she sat there, looking out over the dealership floor, she couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. She had built something real. Something lasting. And whatever the future held, she knew that she had already achieved something extraordinary. As the weeks passed, Mariah continued to work tirelessly, maintaining the positive environment at the dealership while considering the offer from the corporate office. She continued meeting with her team, ensuring that they were growing, developing, and thriving. Each day brought new challenges, but Mariah felt equipped to handle them. She had learned to trust her instincts, and with each challenge, she felt more confident in her abilities. Then, one afternoon, as Mariah was wrapping up a meeting with her staff, she received another call from Jason. This time, his tone was excited. "Miss Johnson, I just wanted to let you know that the board has approved your promotion. We've made the decision to elevate you to the senior leadership position, effective immediately. Your vision and leadership have been nothing short of inspiring, and we're excited to have you help guide the company to even greater success." A sense of triumph washed over Mariah. She had done it. Not only had she proven herself as a successful businesswoman, but she had also earned the respect of those who had once doubted her. She was no longer just an outsider. She was a leader. As she sat down to reflect on her journey, Mariah realized that this was more than just a career milestone. This was a testament to the power of perseverance, resilience, and the belief that anyone, no matter their background, age, or appearance, could succeed if they were willing to fight for it. She had come into that dealership as an outsider, but now, she was in charge. Mariah's story was one of strength and determination, a story that would inspire others for years to come. She had proven that with hard work and unwavering belief in herself, anything was possible. The road ahead was bright, and she was ready for whatever came next.